As we predicted on this channel in my earlier video, things are now becoming much clearer. Confusion is being cleared because yesterday the BBI draft bill was published and the hunt for signatures of Kenyan voters to take it to the next stage was launched. Bila kizungu mingi, the second half of reggae started at very high speed yesterday. Now, we have quite a lot of issues to cover, and a lot of confusion to clear. So let's keep it very simple. We'll divide today's show into two. Number one, we will cover the launch of the BBI draft bill. What does it really mean? How will it impact on Kenyans? Etc., etc. And then number two, we will answer the burning question we had on the last show of how were all these dramatic events linked, because they're all linked. Just to remind you, the president had a 3-hour meeting with the Deputy President William Samoei Ruto. The launch of the signature hunt for the BBI was postponed indefinitely. That meant no date was given when it will be done. Although it suddenly happened yesterday. And then the Deputy President rushed to Dubai. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga went to DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. And then, of course, ICC Manenos. DCI George Kinoti came out and said that investigations were being reopened into complaints, new complaints, linked to the clashes of 2008. And coming at a time when Kenyan lawyer Paul Gisheru had given himself up at the ICC, and all the high wire drama going on at the International Criminal Courts at The Hague, this move, of course, was very suspect. So how are all these dramatic events linked? We're going to answer that question in the second part of this show. So karibu sana, get your tea, get your popcorn, relax as we break it all down. Now, we need to start by emphasizing the fact that there are changes which have been made to the BBI. Oh yes, major changes. We can't cover all the changes here, but to simplify it, I can divide those changes neatly into two. Number one, changes designed to reduce the obstacles, the arguments against the BBI. For instance, the final published bill does away with the proposal of replacing the National Police Service Commission with the Kenya Police Council. That has been omitted. The final bill has also done away with the proposal to transfer some functions of Nairobi County to the national government. Now, both those two proposals had too many issues. All those, in my view, were going to be obstacles to the passing of the BBI. They're things you'd criticize, and your criticism would have weight. And then number two are those changes which were designed to make the document better, to improve on the earlier version of the BBI. For instance, there is the introduction of the idea to appoint deputy ministers. Of course, can be members of parliament. They can be appointed from members of parliament. This improves the earlier proposals Because one of the major problems we've had with this constitution is the fact that cabinet secretaries are not members of parliament. And in this side of the world, we're very used to pinning down the government of the day in parliament, by having people right inside parliament who are accountable, who can be asked questions, who can be held responsible. Copying this American system has not worked too well for us. And quite a number of proposals, earlier proposals in the BBI, addressed this. So this is an additional one, apart from those earlier ones, making the document better. But because of time limitation, let us today focus on the big ones. Things like the executive, a bloated parliament, further straining the taxpayer, and then what in my view will have the biggest impact on ordinary Kenyans, if the BBI referendum finally passes. In fact, let's start with that one. In my opinion, entrenching the CDF, Constituency Development Fund, into the Constitution and the introduction of ward funds will have the biggest impact on ordinary Kenyans everywhere across the Republic. To many Kenyans, these are boring issues. Not many people like to discuss them. Even fewer want to understand them. But very quickly, the entrenchment of the CDF into the Constitution is a great idea. Of course, this was first introduced by the Mwai Kibaki administration, and it has had a huge impact right across the country. Because government funds have been able to reach each and every constituency. Of course, there have been problems of embezzlement, funds being used badly, etc., etc. But then, if we focus on the bigger picture, the impact of the CDF, right across the country can be seen. Very positive. And of course, some people have argued, with merit, that it is good but unconstitutional. If the BBI passes, that will no longer be the case because now it's entrenched. Now, the introduction of the ward funds is yet another way of directing funds right into the grassroots. Apart from the constituency, now you move into the wards, where you have an elected member called a member of a county assembly. In my view, this will have an even bigger impact than the CDF has had so far, because you're dealing with people right there in the grassroots. Playing around with public funds is much more difficult at the ward level, because a constituency is huge, big, and members of parliament disappear to Nairobi. But a member of a county assembly is right there in the county. Every day you see them, you interact with them. I think you get my drift. And so to me, if there was one big reason to pass the BBI, this would be it. You may not agree, but I'm looking at it in terms of what will impact the vast majority of ordinary Kenyans, low income, poverty-stricken Kenyans, etc., etc. Now let's move to the issues that really excite Kenyans, and major bones of contention. For instance, the bloated parliament, because we are now going to have a much more expanded Senate with 47 elected women senators and 47 men. Although that will mean, as far as gender is concerned, we'll have a Senate that is 50-50. Excellent. Very good. However, it means that the Senate will be bigger, because 47 plus 47 is 94, almost 100. And when we move to the National Assembly, it's even worse, because now we don't even have a set number of parliamentarians. Oh yes. the solution in the BBI to address the constitutional requirement that we should not have more than 2/3 of one gender in the House has been addressed with something called top-up. After the elections, the general elections, we will have a top-up of nominations to ensure that the gender rule is observed. In other words, to simplify it will largely depend on how many men we elect as members of parliament. Because the more men we elect as members of parliament, the more top-up we will need in order to meet the gender rule. Now, for somebody who just wants to shoot down the BBI, there's a lot to argue about there. There's a lot to say that is wrong about the BBI. But hold your horses for a minute. And I want us to be truthful and also very blunt. Now, according to me, this time round, the general elections, there's a very big chance that many more women will be elected in the constituencies for a very simple reason. Since 2013, we have had many more women visible on the political front, women reps from every county. And some of them lost the 2017 elections. So they'll be back. And some of them will vie this time to be governors. And some of them, of course, to be members of parliament. Therefore, I predict we will have a record number of women elected directly to various posts. Bottom line, it's not going to be as bad as many critics of the BBI are predicting. Let them not tell Kenyans lies. Secondly, there'll be no situation whereby politicians simply nominate their girlfriends and then mpango kando. No, that won't work. Because there's a requirement within the BBI proposals that those who are nominated must have taken part and lost in the elections. In fact, the number of votes they got will be taken into consideration. And then my third and most important point, this is a long one, you have to be patient, is the fact that we have to look at this issue of a bloated parliament from a historical perspective. The long and short of it is that this whole mess was created by politicians. And usually when politicians create a mess, they create it in such a way that it is almost impossible to undo. And this is the precise situation we have with our bloated parliament. And it started with Kenya's second president, President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, the late. Shortly after he came into power, he realized that he had a great disadvantage within parliament. He feared tribes that had more members of parliament within the August House. Members of parliament vote to pass laws. Therefore, this was a huge headache for him. And the way he solved it was by creating more constituencies within large constituencies, with a small population, which of course favored this Kalenjin community. Now, after Moi, his political opponents realized this. Therefore, you can understand why underrepresentation, which means create more members of parliament to represent less people, why underrepresentation is a major issue in Central Province, which is densely populated. And you can be sure that every area within Kenya that is densely populated will fight very strongly against any attempt to reduce members of parliament. Bottom line, it is the wise most practical thing to do to reduce our members of parliament. However, it is not politically realistic. And let me be very blunt today. Those who have been at the forefront of complaining that we don't need a bloated parliament, we don't need more members of parliament, have forgotten or omitted to tell us that they're the ones who caused this problem in the first place, through President Daniel Arap Moi. And anybody who cares to look at this issue a little more deeply will quickly realize that this is an impossible mess we've gotten ourselves into. This is politics. We have to be realistic. You can argue for something, but then you also need to ask yourself, how politically realistic is it? Is it real politic, or you're just talking? We need to urgently explore other means, other ideas of reducing the wage bill. For instance, reducing the salary and remuneration of our politicians dramatically. That's what we really need to push for. Admittedly, very difficult to achieve. And some would argue it's not real politics, because the same politicians who you want to pass this will not. Many will not want to reduce their salaries. But here is a practical idea. If we can all be serious and demand this from the people we're going to elect into parliament, and we tell them point blank, if we're going to elect you, you must support reduction of what is paid to our members of parliament. You must. If you don't, we'll not re-elect you. If you don't, we can even attempt to recall you. And of course, most important, we must now start thinking seriously about electing people with integrity. Not selfish MPs like we've been doing. Or electing somebody just because he's in a certain party, with a certain presidential candidate whom we want to give as many MPs as possible. No, we need to start getting away from that, and we elect only somebody of integrity. Otherwise, we've already seen how we can suffer when we elect the wrong person. Our vote, the person we elect, has consequences. Now, very quickly, expanded executive.